Okay, this is Think Tech, and it's Wednesday. It's the 3 to 4 block on Wednesday. We're doing a Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel, and we have the honor of having Judge Shaklee Rufetto from Maui. I mean, he's in Maui right now. He was the chief judge of the Second Circuit in Maui. He's since retired, but he and Larry Foster, our other guest, who used to be the dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law and is now teaching there. Yes. After a significant stint in China. We're going to talk about China. And the title of the show is the same title that we used at a Plaza Club program just about 2 weeks ago called Don't Be Afraid. Well, don't be afraid of sending your kid or a CEO to China. So we are delighted to have you both here. Say hi, Larry.
Hi, Jay. Nice to be here. Hi, Shaklee.
Hi, Jay. Hi, Larry.
And if anybody wants to listen or watch, you know, it's on thinktechhawaii.com, it's on ustream.tv, it's on Spreaker.com. It will ultimately be on Olelo and YouTube also, you know, for propagation into the nether, the world. So whatever you say, gentlemen.
We'll be there for a long time.
Okay.
Anyway, let's start with Larry, who served, thank you, Larry, as the moderator of the program we did at the Plaza Club on the 22nd, I think, or the 26th of August, yeah? Mm-hmm. Let's ask you, you know, if you would tell our listeners what exactly happened that made you go to China, and what was your experience like in a general sense, and whether that all suggests that people should follow your footsteps or not.
Sure. Let me give a little broader historical background. I've been going to China since the 1960s. Chinese was my undergraduate major in college. My graduate major wound up getting a PhD in Chinese. Went out to Taiwan in the summer of 1968 for language study. Went back, lived there 71, 72 as a graduate student working on my PhD dissertation. And then been going out to mainland China, Hong Kong, etc. For a long time. But back in 2005, it was my more recent trip out there, if you will. In 2005, my wife started a job in Shanghai, China. And I became what we call in Asia a trailing spouse. My wife had the full-time job.
What's that in Chinese, by the way?
The Chinese don't. I don't know if they have
it's
a term
for it. It's a rare occurrence.
It's a rare occurrence. I was looking for things to do. I was still teaching in the fall at UH, but January to August I was living in Shanghai. So I started off the first 2 or 3 years. I worked at a Chinese law firm, a major Chinese international law firm.
What was the name of it?
The name was Zhonglun, or the full name Zhonglun Jintong. Back when I was working for them, they had offices around China and Tokyo and Hong Kong. I think they've opened one up in the U.S. now. About 500 or 600 lawyers.
That's huge for a Chinese law firm.
Well, it turns out it's small these days.
Oh, everything goes big, right?
Everything goes big. I worked there for about 2.5 years until I got too old to get a work permit. In China, the retirement age for men is, what is it? It's
60, yeah.
60 for men and 55 for women.
Wow.
So from my year 60 on, I had to sort of appeal to allow them to give me a work permit. Finally, after 3 years of appeals, they said, no, that's it, no more work permit for you. So I began doing some training programs then, where I was being paid offshore. We're getting in sort of a gray area here.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was getting paid offshore to go into a PRC law firm or a U.S. law firm, German law firm, major multinational corporation banks in their general counsel's office, to give training programs to the lawyers there, the Chinese lawyers, on if you will, legal English, how to write a memo the way an American lawyer would write a memo.
This is very valuable.
It was an amazing experience. The undergraduate education, well, in almost all the world except the U.S., law is done at the undergraduate level. So it's big lecture halls with a professor standing up there lecturing about one aspect of law or another. Very little, if any, skills training. So these are very smart students who did well in their undergraduate law curriculum, passed the Chinese bar exam, and now they're working at a law firm and having to write memos in English for international companies all around the world. So I would provide them with the skills training. I did that for a number of years. Then the last 3 years, I've been teaching for a university up north called Beijing University, and they started down south in China, just across the border from Hong Kong. They started a American-style ABA law school, hopefully soon to be accredited by the American Bar Association law school, and I've been teaching for them for about 3 years now. I teach, the first year I went there, I taught American Securities Regulation to second and third year students, and then the last 2 years I've been teaching U.S. real property law to first year students.
This must be completely different than the experience of teaching in an American law school.
Not really, actually. You teach in English because it's an American Juris Doctor, American JD program, so it's American law taught in English, American styles, semi-Socratic method. Mm-hmm. As I look out at my student body, it looks very similar to my student body here in Hawaii. Although they're pretty much all Chinese. There's a few foreign students that come in. From Korea or Japan who speak English.
They're pretty well versed in English to start with. Yeah.
Well, they have to be because the entire curriculum is in English.
Yeah, and they won't do very well if they don't have English.
They have to write their final exam for me in English.
Yeah.
So
do you have to treat them with kid gloves on anything, or can you just give them hot court kind of questions and make that method work?
Yeah, I mean those of us that went to law school a few decades ago will remember the old hard court press, mean Socratic method, hide the ball, confuse the student kind of teaching. Most U.S. law professors don't teach that way anymore. We do sort of a mix.
Yeah, really? When did this happen?
Yeah, we do a mix. We still do a bit of the Socratic, but there's also mixed in with lecture stuff. We find that the students just sort of absorb the material better that way. So I didn't teach there any differently than the way I teach in Hawaii.
Why am I reminded? I'm sorry for the digression, but Professor Kingsfield.
Yes.
In the paper chase.
Yes.
Right? And some young fellow, he was interrogating the guy about some case, and the guy's not doing very well. And he says, you're not fit to be in law school. Why don't you get out of my class? Leave, go.
Yeah.
And the guy doesn't know what to do, and the class doesn't know what to do, and he decides that the better part of it, he's going to leave. He has to leave. The Professor Kingfield just told him to leave. He's leaving. So he goes to the back, stands at the top of the amphitheater there at the exit door, and he turns around and he says, Professor, you're a really nasty SOB person, whatever he said. And Professor Kingfield says, wow, that's talking more like a lawyer. Why don't you come on down and take your seat again? Truth of the matter is that really happened, that story. My brother at Harvard Law School was in that course, in that very class where it happened. It's not fiction.
It's not fiction. Yeah. So law schools in some ways are in the U.S. a kinder, gentler place. But we think the learning process is much better now than what it was a few decades ago.
It's become global, it sounds like.
Become global.
Yeah.
So I wound up then being out in China for 8 years doing this in Hawaii in the fall, teaching at the UH Law School, and then again January to August out there in China working, and it was an incredible experience. As we spoke at the program at the Plaza Club a few weeks ago, there's certainly a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of interesting things to do. My wife and I say we have no regrets about having gone out there, and we're very happy to be home.
Yeah, that was great. It was great, your portrayal of that at the program. It was very instructive to the people who were there. They were very appreciative of that. Shaklee, can we move to you for a minute?
Sure.
Just get a handle on what took you to China and what your experience was there.
Well, I don't have near the experience in China as Larry does, for sure.
You're probably younger, too.
No. I did figure out a way to get around the age 60 problem, though.
We want to hear about that.
For short periods of time. Well, I first went out to China in 1984 when I happened to be in Asia on military duty. And I was in Hong Kong and just happened to go to the China Travel Service that handles the tours that go into China. And just on the off chance that I might be able to go, and sure enough, I got a 10-day tour into southern China. The interesting story is they linked. I was traveling by myself, and they linked you up with a roommate. And my roommate was an Afghan young man who lived in the tribal areas of Pakistan. This was during the Soviet War, and he and his the young men from his family would go over the mountains and bring back precious stones, and then bring them to Hong Kong to sell to the jewelers there. And so I traveled with him for 10 days, which was an experience itself. But anyway, China was, as anyone knows who was there during those years, was a very different place. Everyone wore the Chairman Mao suits. There were no cars on the streets. There were lots and lots of bicycles. And you go into the big cities, and there's no street lights. It's very dark and very quiet because you don't have the automobile sounds. But the next time I went was
just to go back for that. Was that after the Cultural Revolution?
Yes.
So things cooled off from the wildest of the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
But
that's about 4 years out from the dark years.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone was extremely friendly, but a lot of people stared at us. You know, we were pretty unusual to see because we went out into the countryside quite a bit, and but everybody was extremely friendly. And one thing I really was impressed with was, people appeared to be fairly poor. Everyone was going someplace and doing something. Either they had a big basket of chickens on the back of a motorbike or a big pile of bamboo or whatever it was. They were going someplace, and they obviously had, they were actively doing something, and nobody was sitting around. And I remember being impressed with that. That if this place ever got going, I remember thinking, if this place ever got going, it's going to be really something because of the energy of the people. And lo and behold. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I was invited to come and serve as a volunteer judge for the Jessup International Law Moot Court Competition for the China Rounds.
Now, what is that? Is that, when you say international, is that international around the world, or is that just the U.S. Vis-a-vis other countries?
No, it's in about 90 countries around the world. It's an annual program. And as I say, more than 90 law schools from more than 90 nations field teams, and then they select the best teams from their particular nation, and they all meet in Washington D.C. in about March of every year, and they have the final.
So is it all in English?
It's all in English, but they do allow some in translation apparently to get people going, but it's almost all in English. Which for the Chinese is not a problem, as Larry mentioned. Both of the schools that I've taught at, everyone spoke English, so I lectured in English. But I was doing the volunteering for the Jessup, and which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed meeting the students, and was pretty impressed with their ability to present an appellate argument, basically, with a Western format. And then I met up with Russell Liu, who's a member of the Hawaii Bar, who is there now, as you know, and is working with a law firm, and he's an associate dean at Beijing Foreign Studies University. And I had always had this idea.
Does he, by the way, take chickens on the motorbike?
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's always in motion, Russell.
Yes.
He never stops. I get email from him at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it is 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, he is definitely. If you go to Beijing and you want to get around and see things, he's the go-to man. That's for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Anyway, I always had this idea of presenting a U.S. jury trial overseas in a participatory way, like a moot, using foreign students or law professionals in the various roles as prosecutor, defense lawyer, witness, and so on, and especially as jurors, because when you try to explain the jury system overseas just by lecturing, first off, you get in a big argument about the O.J. Simpson trial.
Shows what the press can do.
Yeah, and then the next thing they say is, well, our people couldn't do that because they don't understand the law. And I try to explain that that's not the point. That our jurors don't know the law, and if they do, we tell them to disregard it. Because we give them all the law that they need to know. And so I really wanted to do this, and so along the way I got a transcript for one of my trials, a fairly short one, criminal case, and I gathered some other information and drafted a number of memos and PowerPoints to support it. And Russell helped me get an invitation to his school, Beijing Foreign Studies University, which is a huge university right in Beijing there. And after the Jessup in 2012, well, I stayed an extra week, and we went over to his law school, and I put the program on.
This was something you designed. This was not part of the Jessup itself. This was the Shackley-Raffetto program.
Yep. This is my indigenous program.
Okay.
And it was a big success. We had the students divide the roles up. So we had 5 prosecutors and 5 defense lawyers. But see, I have a complete transcript of the trial as well as a DVD of it. And so I sent that plus some other materials describing how the trial works and a checklist and so on in advance, and was working with a professor there who is a former Chinese judge, interestingly enough, who was quite interesting to talk to. And so we put it on over a 2-day period. We did the jury selection, and they presented the case. The only difference is in the real trial, the defendant didn't testify, which is fairly common here. But I had a defendant testify and told him, whatever you're asked, just deny it. And he did. He did a great job. And then the jury retired. And I instructed the jury just like a real trial with the same jury instructions, actually. And they went on and deliberated, came back and found him not guilty, and gave a reasoned explanation as to how they arrived at their verdict, which was very interesting to listen to.
What was it like? What an American jury would say, or in terms of the reasoned explanation, or was it something else? What struck you about it?
I'll give you an example. One of the drugs that were found in the case were in a fanny pack together with the driver's license and an ID card of the defendant and his girlfriend. And they found him not guilty. And we asked them, well, what did you think of the driver's license being in the fanny pack? And they said, well, in China you don't use a driver's license as identification. You just use it if you're actually going to drive a car someplace. And so the fact that the driver's license was there didn't have the same weight that it would in an American jury trial, where we customarily use a driver's license as our main identification. They don't in China. At least that's how I understood what they were saying. But the fact is, they reasoned through it.
Yeah.
And
it wouldn't happen the same way in the U.S., but the reasoning was good, and within the cultural, environment. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was pretty impressed, and I thought, and plus they really enjoyed it. There's an incredible thirst to learn about the U.S. legal system amongst the students. At least that's my impression.
Yeah.
And they really enjoyed the opportunity to actually participate. And of course, the interest level was very high because they were all participating, and they all prepared extremely well. They're very diligent students. And
you loved it, didn't you?
Pardon me?
You loved it.
I loved it. I had a great time. Because I should say, I serve as the judge in the trial, so I do the same thing I would in any trial. And the job of the trial judge basically is to take care of that jury and make sure that they're kept adequately informed as to what's going on, what to expect next. Do you have any questions about the jury instructions? Make sure they all get a copy of the jury instructions and so on. So I basically did the same thing I would do in any normal trial.
Did you wear your robes?
Yes, I did.
Great.
So, Shaklee, I have a question that was left over from our program the other day, and it relates exactly to what you're talking about. And it says, I'll read it in full. What is your purpose for teaching some of our U.S. model of justice to the students? And let's put it in the context of this jury trial. Why did you do that? Did you do it just because it's fun, or did you have some ulterior motive, or why did you do it?
I have an ulterior motive. One of the things I did when I was the judge was I co-chaired our committee on the jury innovations. We call it Jury Innovations for the 21st Century, to see if we could improve our jury system, which we did. We adopted a number of improvements which are now used in Hawaii jury trials. But as a part of that process, I learned, which I did not know, that a very large number of our citizens, something like 50 or 60,000 of our citizens are notified about the potential for jury service, and large number actually get called, though they don't all serve, every year to come down to the court where they are indoctrinated and they learn about the jury system and they learn about the role of the jury and so on. And I realized that over time that's a tremendous educational opportunity and has a tremendous educational impact on our citizens. And I believe it's a very strong reason why we have such strong rule of law in our country, is because large numbers of our people participate in our justice system. I've spoken to every jury that of every trial I did, which is probably more than 200 jury trials, and they all say the same thing. They're very elated. They say, we had a very wonderful experience. We came together with people we never met before in our community, mostly, and we worked together, and we contributed to the betterment of our community, and they learned about how the system works in case someone in their family or a friend has an encounter with the legal system. So I realized that it makes a very important contribution to strengthening the rule of law, and so I thought if I could show in other countries, particularly in a country like China, how this system works, and also make that point to them that if you want to accelerate the development of rule of law and sustain it in your country, then you'd be well advised to find a way to incorporate the participation of your citizens. Now, China and Japan are actually doing that. In China, they changed their system a few years back, and they now have a system of whereby they use what are called people's assessors, who are lay people. They're carefully selected, apparently. Larry probably knows more about this than I do, but they're usually highly educated people, but they're not judges. And they sit in a panel on certain cases and jointly work together to render the verdict. It's different than our system. In our system, the jury only finds the facts, determines credibility, and finds the facts of the case. So they're not in competition with the judge. Whereas in the Chinese system, the lay people are actually working at the same process as the judge. So I don't think it's that good, as effective, because judges are always going to dominate a process like that.
Yeah. Shaklee, let me take a minute and take a break.
Okay.
This is Think Tech Talks. I'm here with Shaklee Ruffetto, the retired Chief Judge of the Second Circuit, and Larry Foster, the former Dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law, now teaching there after a long stint in China. We're talking about don't be afraid of sending your kid or a CEO to China, which is the name of the program we did at the Plaza Club a couple of weeks ago with these very guys. Anyway, we'll take a moment, a short break. We'll be right back. Thanks.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a Senior Executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle in Cook, Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the gas company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're ThinkTech, doing a ThinkTech Talks with Larry Foster and Shaklee Raffetto about do not be afraid to send your kid or CEO to China. And we have discussed with Larry what he did there. We've discussed with Shaklee what he did there. Very interesting, but separate paths in how you do this. Both lawyers, of course. Now we're at the point where we're going to follow up on the program we had 2 weeks ago, because Larry is sitting here with some hand-picked questions that we actually never got to answer. So this is fresh discussion. So Larry, why don't you pick your favorite questions?
Yeah. So Shaklee, let me have you start off on this one. So a lot of people in Hawaii are interested in going to China, but they don't speak Chinese, so they're worried about how can I do anything, how can I work, or how can I teach in China if I don't speak Chinese. I think you've kind of addressed that a little bit, but maybe if you could specifically go to that. I'll assume you spoke little, if any, Chinese when you went out there. Was that a hindrance for you to do what you wanted to do?
No, you're right. I speak about 2 words of Mandarin. Alas, I'm hoping to change that, but the two universities that I taught at, the Beijing Foreign Studies University, and then in this July at the University of International Relations, I did everything in English, and the class all spoke English. Now I know at Beijing Foreign Studies University they require English language of all of their law students. I don't know if that's true in other law schools, but I have found that most young people speak English. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Now, I think if you got in a cab, you might have to have it written in Chinese so that the cab driver know where you wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you take I think if you take it out of the law school context, I think in any academic context or even a business context, Chinese is certainly helpful. But you can, if you will, get by without Chinese. What we do see now, however, is more and more foreigners coming to China really speak some excellent Chinese. I think when my wife and I went back there in 2005 for her to start working, what surprised us the most was the large number of foreigners who spoke very, very good Chinese. When we first started going out there in the 70s and 80s, it was rare for a foreigner to speak good Chinese. And when we were out again in 2005, it was just, there was a large number of people. But
are these Americans, or are they
all over the world?
All over the world. All over the world. They could be German or French or who knows what.
Absolutely. I was particularly impressed by the Australians. Mm-hmm. I met a number of Australians who just had very, very good Chinese. But people from all over the world. Are we
talking about only spoken, or are we talking about written as well?
Yeah, spoken's a little easier to pick up in some ways, but yeah, I would say generally both spoken and
impressive.
And written.
Larry, do you know if it's required in all of the Chinese universities that the students learn English, or what?
I think English is, I can't remember when it starts, but it starts maybe in middle school, maybe earlier, where they begin the study of English. But they're, what you find is that big surprise. Some middle school teachers of English are better at it than others. So a lot of people have been exposed to English for all of their educational period, but they've never really had a chance to speak or speak with or listen to a foreigner. So they can be a little hesitant at first.
You know, the month before back in June of this year, I did some lecturing in Japan at the University of Fukuoka, and that all had to be through translation. Mm-hmm. Yet in China, the students spoke, when I say they spoke English, they spoke perfect English.
Yeah.
If you dropped one on the street in Honolulu, you would think the person grew up in Honolulu.
Yeah. Well, where do they learn that in school, I guess?
Yes.
And the question, the reverse question is that the Americans that you were talking about, Larry, who are in China speaking good Chinese, where did they learn it?
Often the same way, through school, through like in Hawaii, you can get it at least in high school, maybe even in intermediate school in Hawaii. A number of the high schools offer Chinese, certainly at the university level. So a lot of people come to China already having had several years of Chinese language instruction before they hit the ground. But a lot of people just come out. It still is a great land of opportunity.
China.
You know,
And the energy. Yeah. Sorry, Shackley. Go ahead.
So Larry, you speak Mandarin?
Yes.
Can you get by in southern China with Mandarin?
Of course. So what Shackley's referring to is the national language of China is Mandarin Chinese. But each region has its own, some people call them dialects. Actually, they're different languages. They come from the same mother language, the mother tongue. But if somebody from southern China is speaking in, so let's say from the Guangdong province, just across the border from Hong Kong, somebody up north will not understand the word they're saying, or very little of what they're saying. So they have to switch into Mandarin in order for there to be effective communication. There was a famous leader in China by the name of Mao Zedong.
Oh, I remember him.
You remember him. And I should know, but I can't remember which province he was from. He would try to speak Mandarin and give his speeches in what he thought was Mandarin, but most of his audience had no idea what he was saying. So it would have to be translated, if you will,
one dialect to another,
into Mandarin.
Well, is the government doing anything now about this? You know, I mean, I'm sure the government is looking for uniformity. They must be incentivizing, encouraging people to speak one dialect.
That's an interesting thing. That was certainly the purpose way back when. And there was I think the hope by central government is that these local dialects, languages, if you will, would just sort of go by the wayside. What is happening now is that actually a lot of these local languages are really thriving. So, for example, Cantonese, you can get computer software to write in Cantonese, if you will. They use slightly different
using the kanji and all that.
Yeah, yeah. We lived in Taiwan for a while, and I think I went back to Taiwan in the year 2000 or 2002, and I was surprised that on TV people were talking in Taiwanese and singing in Taiwanese. That was unheard of back in 1968. Same thing in Shanghai. Shanghai has the Shanghai language, if you will, and even within Shanghai there's regional versions of Shanghainese. In theory, public school education in Shanghai is supposed to be in Mandarin. In reality, public education in Shanghai is in Shanghainese, which creates a bit of a problem for a number of the students who come from outside of Shanghai, because they sit there and they have no idea what the teacher is saying, if you will. It's not a good analogy, but in Hawaii back in the day, Roosevelt was an English standard school where you would go to Roosevelt and learn how to speak proper English, as opposed to my alma mater.
It's an uncomfortable analogy, though.
Yeah, as opposed to my alma mater, Kailua High, where pidgin was okay.
Yeah, really.
So there had been an attempt for uniformity, and from time to time there's directives aimed at the media, for example, TV, that all TV shows must be in Mandarin. So I turn on TV and here's this Judge Judy type show, and it's all in Shanghainese, with no subtitles.
Wait a minute, you Judge Judy? You mean with a judge?
Yeah.
Shackley, are you listening to this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's popular. People want that.
Yes, the law is relatively new to China, and the people are as Shackley is seeing with the programs he's doing, and they're just fascinated by the law. And for the government purposes, it's important to sort of more broadly educate the people about the law. But language is a huge issue all around the world, and we have it in the United States. English only statutes in some of our states.
Yeah.
And all
But
that.
I understand in China that the government made a decision that English was going to be a language that's taught in their schools.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now think about that. That's a very interesting that the party calls all the shots over there, and they made that decision for the future of China. That's very interesting.
Well, you say it's what about it is interesting. I mean, what I hear the sound of is we want to have economic success everywhere in the world. English is the the standard in most places in the world. So,
but they didn't do it in Japan.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you have a reason for that, Larry?
My sense is that Japan does it too, but their level of their mastery of English is much less than the Chinese mastery of English. I know more Chinese who speak very good English than I know Japanese that speak very good English.
I agree. I spent a bit of time in Japan, and it's rare to find someone there who speaks perfect English.
Yeah.
Well, what I get out of this is that the Chinese, aside from that energy that Shackley talked about, and that special energy, you feel it like a burst in your face as soon as you get off a plane. But there's also as a mindset here. It's more of a global mindset, more of a business mindset, more of a we're going somewhere mindset. Collectively, we're all on the same page. Am I right about that? I mean, what do you feel when you go to China about the mindset of the people, how they look at the world, the global approach? Is it as it seems to be?
Well, if I may say, most of my experience, of course, has been with the students and the professors, but I found it very common for the professors to have advanced LLM degrees from American universities. In subjects like constitutional law or various aspects of constitutional law, and the students, the better students, all strive to go to the U.S. to earn an LLM. They're very interested in what states will let them practice law if they earn an LLM, which I think New York is maybe one. And now I was interested to learn that some of the students are wanting to earn JD degrees in the U.S.
Why is that? What does that reflect in terms of the national view of it?
Well, I don't know. The way they speak about it is they would like to have experience practicing in the U.S. before they return to China.
For commerce, for trade, for economics.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, I think the JD degree in particular, if you're a Chinese lawyer working for let's make it an American international law firm that has offices in China, the JD allows you to move up on a different track. If all you have is a Chinese law degree or maybe even an LLM from outside of China, you're sort of boxed in. You can't move into that, moving up the levels within an truly international law firm. So they do it as a ticket upward, if you will.
I see.
For the professors, and this is true again pretty much all around the world except the United States. Teaching credentials are very important, and particularly in law. So in law, you really have to have a PhD in law. So we often in the U.S. call that a SJD degree. So many people from China, from all around the world, sort of travel around the world to pick up this highest level of legal education, so that they can come back to their home country and move up the academic
It's a
ranks.
great commitment, great sacrifice, very expensive. No question about it. And they're willing to make the sacrifice.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of being globalized, that's an interesting question. I don't know why I haven't thought of that too much before. My impression in Japan is that the Japanese are probably a little more globalized. Well, are more globalized than than what we see in the U.S. There's a great push on the part of the Japanese Ministry of Education, and at the national level, putting money into it to sort of push globalization. In China, China is still a young country. And I think they have a love-hate relationship with globalization.
Funny you should say young country. It was about 5,000 years old, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about modern China. 19,
Okay.
however you define that, either 1949 or 1911.
49,
They're still relatively young in what they're doing, and as with even well, like in the U.S., we go back and forth about globalization. When I don't remember what the statistic is, but an extremely small percentage of our U.S. Congress have passports or have ever left the country,
Yeah, heard that.
or have any desire to leave the country.
Speaking about leaving, we're going to take a short break. Okay,
Yeah.
hold that
Okay.
thought. We'll be back for more. This is Think Tech Talks with Larry Foster and Shackley Ruffetto. Larry is the former dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law, teaching there now after a stint in China. And Shackley Ruffetto was the chief judge of the Second Circuit here, and he has found a new world in China for judges and moot courts of one kind and another. We're calling this "Don't Be Afraid of Sending Your Kid or CEO to China," the same name as we used for the program 2 weeks ago at the Plaza Club. And when we get back, we'll take some more questions from Larry. Those are questions that were at least going to be discussed at the program in the Plaza Club, and we'll try to make some grand conclusions. You like grand conclusions.
Grand conclusions.
We'll be right back. Aloha, this is Jay Fidel. Think Tech and the Hawaii Venture Capital Association put on monthly luncheon panel programs at the Plaza Club here in Pioneer Plaza. Our program this time is on September 26th. It's called Solar in Hawaii. We're going to examine the solar industry and see what's in it for the long haul. We have a great panel, great moderator. We'll be sending out email on this. If you want to be in our email list to receive the details, check out thinktechhawaii.com. In any event, you can sign up for the program at hvca.org. Thanks. See you there. This is Jay Fidel. Mahalo. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks. We're talking about China. Don't be afraid to send your kid or CEO to China in the name of the program we do at the Plaza Club with these very same gentlemen, Larry Foster and retired Judge Shackley Ruffetto. So we had more questions. The table is covered. If you look at our Ustream on thinktechhawaii.com, you'll see the table is covered, somewhat covered, with green index cards questions that Larry is drawing from. So Larry, what's the next question?
Yeah, and these are all really great questions, and arguably we could do an entire show on any one of these green cards. That's an interesting term, green
cards. Yeah, yes. So maybe that's why we did it that way.
Moving on. And this is what I often call the Hawaii question. And any program about international often comes up with, what does this have to do with Hawaii? So the question is, does it do Hawaii any good if I were to go and work in China? How does that benefit Hawaii? Shackley, do you want to start off on that?
Yes, I think it can benefit Hawaii tremendously. We are always talking about Hawaii being the crossroads of the Pacific and the entryway to Asia. And China has been for Japan, and I think it can be as well in almost the same way as it was for Japan. People they have to know about what we have here, and by going over to teach. Now, of course, all the people I've met certainly know about Hawaii, and but I'll give you a good example of how it can work out. Is while I was there, I visited the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, and the rule of law attorney there introduced me via email with a Professor Chen at the Guilin University of Electrical Technology Law School. And he and I have been corresponding. He's very interested in the common law system and how it might be able to be adopted in China, which is an interesting question. And we corresponded back and forth, and finally I invited him to gather a group and come over, and I would make arrangements with our judiciary so that they could actually watch a jury trial. And he did that. He went on a Chinese, Weibo or whatever they call it, and gathered a group of 6 people, lawyers and a couple of paralegals actually, and they're going to arrive on the 30th of September, and I'm going to take them over to First Circuit, and we're going to watch a jury trial, and then go meet the Chief Justice and have a photo opportunity. Now, they've already asked me, I just got an email today, is it possible for us to meet some Hawaii lawyers, anybody who's interested in doing business in China? And so I'm looking for some lawyers, some of our Hawaii lawyers who would like to meet these folks. But that's just a good example of how that can begin the flow of people from China to learn about our justice system, people from China to learn about our economic opportunities here. And I think each of us is a citizen ambassador for our state. And when we go to China, and I think it can have tremendous benefits for our state and our community.
Absolutely. I hope you bring him around Think Tech, Shackley. We'd
like
love to have him on this very same program, you know.
Yeah, Shackley makes a good point. This is really it's really a two-way ambassadorship. On the one hand, you're out there promoting Hawaii, U.S. in general, perhaps. But coming back here, we were talking earlier about globalization. You become an ambassador in Hawaii for globalization. A lot of folks in Hawaii say, and we talked earlier about a lot of the folks in the U.S., you know, why should we worry about what happens outside? Well, we really should, because the world really is very interconnected. And the more we know about that and how it works, I think the better off we are. So Shackley now is a great ambassador to sort of talk about China on Maui, and you know, maybe educate some of the people on Maui about why it's important that the U.S. maintain a good relationship with China.
You know what Russell Liu always says? He says you got to put Mandarin signs in the airport. If you don't do that, they're offended. So we have to work on that. And speaking of working on things, you know, this goes back to George Ariyoshi about Hawaii should be a bridge to Asia, a global place. You know, he talked about that for the whole time he was in office and after. And he served in the East-West Center for years. He was a very valuable, constructive member of the board. He was the chair, I think, of the East-West Center for a long time. And so, you know, we haven't done what he wanted us to do. We made little steps. And now we can make big ones, you know. Being in China, what Shackley's doing in China, this is what we need to do, and a lot of people have to do it, right? Yeah. The two-way street, everybody has to work on that.
Yeah. So here's, let me come back to more of a lifestyle question. And maybe Shackley, you can talk about this, and I can talk about it as well. So in China, in the West, we're hearing more about what we call food safety issues in China. So let's ask the question this way: when you were out there, did you have any concerns about food safety, or you know, are you still alive?
Well, I did get all my hepatitis shots before I went. but no, I didn't even think about it, to tell you the truth. I just ate where, you know, whoever I was with ate. The opportunity for good food is incredible in China. I mean, there are all those different places in China that have their own cuisine that you can sample, which is great stuff. And I love Chinese food anyway, so I didn't even think about it, to tell you the truth. I just ate what my friends ate, and I didn't have any problem.
You never had a problem? That's great.
Yeah.
In your time, you must have had a problem with too, Larry.
Well, actually, the only time I got sick on food in China in 8 years was at a Western hotel. But the food safety issue they're talking about is not so much, you know, unsanitary stuff, but it laps into the problems in China with the environmental pollution issues. So they've recently discovered that a substantial portion of the rice in China is tainted with heavy metals, which are
not good for you.
Not good for you. Whenever there's any kind of respiratory illness going around, all the chickens get slaughtered. Although what you find is that suddenly the chicken prices drop because they're slaughtering and selling them.
just a free market.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
there's no question that the pollution is pretty strong, and at least
Yeah.
in Beijing when I was there, it is pretty heavy. Though I have to say, though, I was just so excited about being there that I didn't really notice it that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Russell, when I asked Russell Liu for a photograph of him, to put on our program materials 2 weeks ago, he sent me a picture with wearing a gas mask, and I thought it was a joke. But he actually does wear a gas mask, and I mean, including Brenda, your wife, made a comment about how that was a big problem for her. Anyway, you guys, we're out of time. We have another program at 4 o'clock about energy. We're going to have to cut this. I am so sorry, but but we can do it again. Now, we still have a lot of cards. Shackley, can you come back? Larry, can you come back?
Sure, anytime.
That's Larry Foster, the Dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law a few years ago, spent 8 years in China. Now he's teaching at the School of Law. And Shackley Federer, the Chief Judge of the Second Circuit, who has found a new avocation in China, and you can tell that he's passionate about it. This is Think Tech Talks, talking about don't be afraid of sending your kid or CEO to China. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jay.
Larry,
Jay, thank you.
Shackley, aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Zaijian,
Aloha.
Xianxie.
Yeah.